What would you do if the love of your life, the woman carrying your first child, vanished into thin air? For Liam Peterson, this wasn't a hypothetical question. One Tuesday morning, his pregnant wife, Elena, was there, her laughter echoing in their sunlit kitchen. By Tuesday afternoon, she was gone. No note, no call, no trace. The police had no leads, his friends had no answers, and his heart was shattering into a million pieces. He spent every waking second searching, praying, and descending into a personal hell. And then 10 days later, in the checkout line of a grocery store, he saw her. Not in the flesh, but on the cover of a magazine. And the woman staring back at him was not the wife he knew. The scent of brewing coffee and toasted sourdough was the metronome of Liam Peterson's mornings. It was a rhythm of domestic bliss he had come to cherish more than anything. On this particular Tuesday, the 7th of October, the sun streamed through the kitchen window of their charming suburban home in Maple Creek, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny golden fairies. At the center of this idyllic scene was Elena, his Elena. 7 months pregnant, she had a glow that seemed to generate its own light. Her dark hair was loosely tied up, a few stray curls framing a face that was the very definition of contentment. She was humming a soft, tuneless melody as she carefully spread avocado on a slice of toast. Liam leaned against the doorframe, a quiet observer of his perfect world. They'd met 4 years ago at a small independent bookstore, a meet-cute so cliché they often laughed about it. He, an architect who appreciated clean lines and solid foundations, had been instantly captivated by her, a freelance illustrator whose life was a vibrant tapestry of color and imagination. She grounded his ambition. He structured her dreams. Staring again, "Mr. Peterson," she said without turning around, her voice warm and laced with amusement. "Guilty as charged, Mrs. Peterson," he replied, walking over and wrapping his arms around her from behind. He rested his hands on her swollen belly, feeling the gentle flutter of their daughter-to-be. "Just admiring my 2 favorite girls." Elena leaned back against his chest with a contented sigh. "Well, your second favorite girl is demanding avocado toast, and possibly pickles," he chuckled, kissing the top of her head. "Whatever the princess wants, the princess gets." Their morning unfolded with the comfortable ease of a long-practiced routine. They talked about the nursery, debating once again between a soft lavender and a warm daffodil yellow for the walls. They discussed his upcoming presentation for a new city library project and her deadline for a children's book. It was all so wonderfully, beautifully normal. At 8:30 a.m., Liam kissed her goodbye. It was a lingering kiss, full of unspoken promises and the shared excitement for their future. "I'll be home by 6, he said. "Don't overdo it today, okay? Let the pencils rest." "I promise," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I have a date with a trashy novel and a foot bath." "Love you." "Love you more," he whispered, before grabbing his briefcase and heading out the door. The day at the firm was grueling. Liam was neck-deep in blueprints and zoning regulations, his mind a whirlwind of cantilevered beams and structural loads. He texted Elena around noon. "Thinking of you. How's the foot bath?" Usually she'd reply within minutes with a witty comment or a cute emoji. But by 1 p.m. there was no reply. He shrugged it off. She was probably napping. Pregnancy tired her out more than she let on. By 4 p.m., a small, cold knot of unease began to form in his stomach. He called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. That was unusual. Elena was meticulous about keeping her phone charged. He tried again at 4:30. Voicemail. And again at 5 Hazura. Voicemail. The unease was now a frantic, buzzing anxiety. He packed his things in a rush, giving his boss a clipped apology about a family matter, and sped home. The drive, usually a 25-minute buffer to decompress, was a torment of red lights and slow drivers each second, stretching into an eternity. He pulled into the driveway and saw her car, the sensible blue sedan, parked in its usual spot. A wave of relief washed over him. She was home. Maybe her phone died, and she fell asleep listening to that audiobook she loved. He chided himself for being so paranoid. But the moment he stepped inside, the silence of the house hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was an empty, hollow silence. "Lena," he called out, his voice unnaturally loud. "Honey, I'm home." No answer. He walked through the house. In the kitchen, her half-eaten slice of avocado toast sat on the counter, now brown and unappetizing. A mug of tea, cold to the touch, was beside it. In the living room, a novel lay face down on the sofa, its spine creased at page 47. The bath upstairs was dry. The bed was perfectly made. Everything was in its place, except for her. He checked the closets. Her clothes were there. He checked the bathroom. Her toiletries were lined up neatly. Her purse was gone. Her keys were gone. And her phone was presumably with her. He called her best friend, Sarah. "Hey, Sarah, it's Liam. Is Elena with you by any chance?" "Liam?" "No, I haven't spoken to her since yesterday. We were supposed to grab lunch tomorrow. Is everything okay?" Sarah's cheerful voice was jarring against his rising panic. "Yeah, I can't reach her," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. He called her mom, who lived 2 states away. She hadn't heard from Elena either, but promised to call if she did, her voice tightening with a mother's worry. By 7 p.m. the sun had set, and the house was shrouded in shadows that seemed to mock his happy memories from that morning. The beautiful normality had shattered, replaced by a terrifying void. He called the Maple Creek Police Department. The officer on the phone, a man named Henderson, was professionally calm, but sounded weary. He took down the details. Yes, she was 28. Yes, 7 months pregnant. No history of mental illness. No, they hadn't had a fight. The conversation had been perfect. Their life was perfect. As Liam said the words, they tasted like ash in his mouth. "Sir, it's only been a few hours," Officer Henderson said. "It's common for people to be out of touch for a bit. She might have gone to the mall and her phone died. We can't officially file a missing person report until 24 hours have passed." "But she's pregnant." Liam's voice cracked, the control he was clinging to finally snapping. "She wouldn't just disappear. Something is wrong." The officer's platitudes about staying calm and waiting were meaningless noise. Liam hung up the phone, his hand trembling. He stood in the center of their living room, surrounded by the life they had built together, the photos on the mantel, the lopsided clay pot he'd made in a pottery class. She'd dragged him to the soft throw blanket on the armchair where she loved to read. Every object was a testament to her presence, and every object screamed of her absence. He spent the night sitting on the sofa, staring at the front door, willing it to open. He didn't sleep. He just waited, listening to the deafening silence, while the perfect world he'd woken up in that morning crumbled around him. Tuesday had come and gone, and with it, so had Eleanor. The first 72 hours were a blur of bureaucratic nightmares and gut-wrenching fear. A missing person report was officially filed. Detective Isabella Rossi, A woman with sharp, empathetic eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor was assigned to the case. She sat with Liam in his now sterile living room, her pen scratching against a notepad. The sound an unwelcome intrusion into the silence. "Mr. Peterson," she began, her voice gentle but firm. "I need you to tell me everything. Does Elena have any ex-boyfriends who might be unstable? Any family disputes? Financial troubles? Any secrets she might have kept from you?" Liam shook his head, his mind feeling like a fog. "No. Nothing. We were happy. Her parents passed away when she was young. She was raised by an aunt who died a few years ago. She has no other family that I know of. No exes to speak of. Our finances are fine. We have no secrets." Detective Rossi's gaze lingered on him for a moment, an unreadable expression on her face. "In my experience, Mr. Peterson, everyone has secrets." The words stung. He and Elena prided themselves on their honesty. They were a team, a partnership built on a foundation of trust. The idea that she could have a secret life was not just unbelievable, it was a betrayal of everything he thought they had. The police did their due diligence. They put out an alert, checked local hospitals and morgues, a word that made Liam physically ill, and began tracking her credit card and phone activity. The results were maddening. Her credit card hadn't been used since she bought groceries, 2 days before she disappeared. Her phone's last ping was near their house at 9:15 a.m. on Tuesday, right after he'd left for work. Then it had been turned off. It was as if she had simply stepped out of her life and vanished from the face of the earth. Liam's friend Mark became his anchor. He brought over food that Liam didn't eat, sat with him in silence when he couldn't speak, and fielded the endless calls from concerned friends. "We'll find her, man," Mark would say, clapping him on the shoulder. "She's a smart woman. There has to be a simple explanation." But as the days bled into one another, the hope for a simple explanation faded, replaced by a dark, creeping dread. Liam couldn't work. He couldn't sleep. He spent his hours pacing the house, calling Elena's voicemail, just to hear her voice, the cheerful recording a cruel mockery of his reality. He printed out flyers with her smiling face and plastered them all over town, his hands shaking as he taped her image to telephone poles and coffee shop windows. The woman on the flyer looked happy, carefree. She was a stranger to the hollowed-out man he was becoming. By day 5, Liam felt he was losing his mind. The police had nothing new. The news cycle had already moved on. He was alone with his grief and the million unanswered questions. He decided he had to do something, anything other than wait. He began his own investigation, tearing their house apart, in a desperate search for a clue, a hint, anything he might have missed. He started in the attic, a space filled with forgotten holiday decorations and sentimental junk. After hours of sifting through dusty boxes, he found it. Tucked away in the corner beneath a stack of old college textbooks was a small, locked wooden box. He didn't recognize it. It was old, made of dark cherry wood, with an intricate silver latch. His heart hammered against his ribs. He took it downstairs, and with a screwdriver from his toolbox, pried the lock open. The contents stole the air from his lungs. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a collection of items that made no sense. There was a stack of letters, tied with a silk ribbon, written in a spidery script he didn't recognize. There was a heavy, ornate silver locket, but when he opened it, it was empty. And underneath it all, there was a passport. It wasn't Elena's. The photo showed a younger version of his wife, maybe 16 or 17. Her hair was longer, and her smile was strained, but it was unmistakably her. The name on the passport, however, was not Elena Miller. It was Camilla Sinclair. Liam stared at the name, his mind refusing to process it. Camilla Sinclair. Who was Camilla Sinclair? He fumbled through the passport. Place of birth, Greenwich, Connecticut. He'd always believed she was from a small town in Oregon, like she'd told him. It was part of her charm, the small-town girl who'd made a new life for herself. His hands shaking, he picked up the letters. They were all addressed to Camilla and signed by someone named Carmen. The letters spoke of a life of unimaginable wealth and suffocating expectations. They mentioned galas, charity balls, and business trips to Zurich. One line leaped out at him. "I know you had to leave, Ellie. Father is becoming more unbearable than ever. He's furious, of course. He says you've disgraced the Sinclair name, but I think you're the bravest person I know. Please be safe out there." Father. Disgraced the Sinclair name. A wave of vertigo washed over Liam. He slumped into a chair, the passport and letters spread out on the table before him. Elena Miller, the freelance illustrator, the woman who loved farmers' markets and hiking trails, who claimed to have no family, was a lie. Her name was Camilla Sinclair, and she had run away from a life of privilege, from a controlling father, from a world he knew nothing about. Detective Rossi's words echoed in his head. Everyone has secrets. He had been married to a ghost, a carefully constructed identity. The woman he loved, the woman carrying his child, was a complete stranger. The foundation of his entire world, the bedrock of his love and trust, had just been pulverized into dust. The question shifted. It was no longer just, "Where is she?" It was now, and more terrifyingly, "Who is she?" And was her past the reason she was gone? Had this life she'd run from finally caught up with her? The fear for her safety was now compounded by a chilling sense of betrayal. He looked at the photo on their mantelpiece, the two of them on their wedding day, beaming. Had she been Camilla Sinclair then? Was any of it real? He felt a cold, hard anger beginning to bloom in the pit of his stomach, an anger at her for her deception, and an even greater terror for what that deception might have cost them. The discovery of the wooden box plunged Liam into a new dimension of hell. For 10 days he had been grieving a lost wife. Now he was grappling with the ghost of a woman he had never truly known. He didn't tell the police about the box, not yet. How could he? How could he explain that the woman they were searching for, Elena Miller, didn't technically exist? He felt like a fool, a man duped by the most elaborate and intimate of lies. His waking hours were now consumed by a frantic, obsessive search for Camilla Sinclair. He typed the name into his search engine, and the world that opened up on his screen was staggering. Sinclair. The name wasn't just a name. It was a brand, an empire. Sinclair Global, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with interests in shipping technology and real estate. The articles were endless, painting a portrait of one of America's most powerful and reclusive families, and at its head was the patriarch Alistair Sinclair, a man whose face, even in corporate headshots, was a mask of cold, ruthless ambition. Then he found her. There were older articles, society pages from years ago featuring a teenage Camilla Sinclair at charity events, standing stiffly beside her father. In every photo, she had the same strained smile he'd seen in the passport picture. The articles described her as the elusive Sinclair heiress. And then, about 8 years ago, she had simply dropped off the society pages. There was speculation of her studying abroad, of a falling out with her family. But then nothing. She had vanished from their world just as completely as she had vanished from his. He had married a runaway heiress. The woman who clipped coupons and insisted on buying second-hand baby clothes was the sole heir to a fortune that could buy half of Maple Creek. The irony was so bitter it made him want to laugh and scream at the same time. His emotions were a tangled, chaotic mess. He felt betrayed, yes, but beneath the anger and confusion, the all-consuming love he had for her was still there now, twisted into a knot of terror. This wasn't just a woman who had lied about her name. This was a woman who had run from a powerful, controlling father. Had Alistair Sinclair found her? Was that why she was gone? Was she a prisoner in a gilded cage somewhere in Greenwich, Connecticut? On the 10th day of her disappearance, Liam forced himself to leave the house. He was out of coffee milk and any semblance of hope. The fluorescent lights of the local grocery store felt harsh and alien. He moved through the aisles like a zombie, grabbing items without seeing them. It was at the checkout counter, while waiting behind a woman meticulously counting out coupons, that his world stopped for the second time in as many weeks. His eyes drifted to the magazine rack. It was a sea of celebrity gossip and home design glosses. But one cover stood out, its bold, stark lettering demanding attention. It was the latest issue of Forbes, and on the cover was a face he knew better than his own. It was Elena, but it wasn't. The woman on the cover was an ice queen. Her dark hair was styled in a severe, elegant chignon. She wore a tailored power suit of navy blue that screamed money and authority. Her makeup was flawless, her expression imperious and cold. The soft, laughing eyes he loved were now hard, calculating chips of obsidian. She looked directly into the camera, and there was not a trace of the warm, gentle illustrator he had married. She was every inch the powerful, corporate titan. She was Camilla Sinclair. Liam's breath hitched in his throat. His heart felt like it had been dropped from a great height. He fumbled for the magazine, his hands trembling so badly he could barely grasp it. The headline in bold yellow font read, "The Prodigal Daughter Returns. Camilla Sinclair takes the helm at Sinclair. Global, after father's sudden retirement." He read the words over and over, but they wouldn't compute. Sudden retirement, takes the helm. He scanned the subheadline. After an 8-year hiatus, the enigmatic heiress returns to claim her birthright, stunning Wall Street and ushering in a new era for the multi-billion-dollar empire. A wave of nausea and disbelief crashed over him. This wasn't a kidnapping. This wasn't a woman taken against her will. This was a choice. She had left him. She had walked out of their quiet, happy life, out of their shared future, and stepped back into the world she had supposedly fled. She had abandoned him and their unborn child to become a CEO. The cashier cleared her throat. "Sir, are you going to pay for that?" Liam stared at her blankly, the magazine clutched in his white-knuckled fist. He threw a $20 bill on the counter, not waiting for the change, and stumbled out of the store, the automatic doors sliding open to a world that was now irrevocably different. He sat in his car in the parking lot, the magazine open on the passenger seat. He read the article, his vision blurring with tears of rage and heartbreak. The article was a masterpiece of corporate PR. It spoke of Alistair Sinclair's health issues, forcing a sudden departure. It quoted Camilla in crisp, impersonal sound bites about honoring her father's legacy and steering the company into the future. There was no mention of a husband, no mention of a pregnancy. The Camilla Sinclair on those glossy pages was a woman unburdened by a past in Maple Creek. The loving wife, the excited mother-to-be, the trashy novels, the footbaths. It was all a lie. A game. A role she had been playing for 4 years. Had she grown tired of playing the part of a normal person? Had the allure of power and wealth been too strong to resist? The love he felt for her curdled into a raw, agonizing poison. The grief for a missing person was clean compared to this. This was a profound, soul-deep betrayal. She hadn't been taken from him. She had left him. Willingly, without a word, without a single glance back. He drove home. The image of her cold, powerful face on the magazine cover burned into his mind. He walked into the nursery they had been planning, with its half-assembled crib and stack of baby books. The daffodil yellow paint samples on the wall seemed to mock him. He had been building a foundation for a family, while she had been waiting for the right time to detonate it. He collapsed onto the floor, the magazine falling open beside him. He wasn't just a husband searching for his missing wife anymore. He was a man whose entire reality had been a fraud, whose future had been stolen by a woman who was a stranger. And as he stared at the face of Camilla Sinclair, a new feeling began to crystallize through the pain, a cold, hard resolve. He wasn't going to let this go. He deserved answers. And more importantly, his unborn daughter deserved to know why her mother had chosen a boardroom over her. He was going to find her, not to bring her home, but to confront the woman on the cover of the magazine. He was going to confront Camilla Sinclair. The next 48 hours were a maelstrom of calculated action, fueled by a toxic cocktail of fury and heartbreak. The image of Camilla Sinclair on the cover of Forbes was a constant, searing presence in Liam's mind. He cancelled Elena's missing person report. The conversation with Detective Rossi was brief and excruciating. "You've found her." Rossi's voice was sharp with professional interest. You could say that Liam replied, his own voice hollow. "She's fine." It was a misunderstanding, a family matter. He could feel the detective's skepticism through the phone line. "Mr. Peterson, if you're in any trouble, I'm not." "Thank you for your help, Detective." He hung up before she could ask any more questions, before he had to voice the humiliating truth. "My wife didn't get it kidnapped. She just got a promotion." He booked a one-way train ticket to New York City. He packed a small bag with a few changes of clothes, the wooden box with its damning contents, and the Forbes magazine, which he now treated like a piece of evidence in the trial of his life. He called Mark and told him a version of the truth that Eleanor had left to deal with a family crisis she'd kept secret, and he was going to get answers. Mark's concern was palpable. "Liam, are you sure this is a good idea? Going after her like this? This sounds big. Maybe you should talk to a lawyer. I'm not looking for a legal battle." "Mark," Liam said, his jaw tight. "I'm looking for my wife, or whoever she is. I need to look her in the eye and ask her why." The train ride was a long, lonely journey through the fading autumn landscapes. Liam stared out the window, but he didn't see the passing towns or the fiery colors of the trees. He saw Elena's face, not the cold mask from the magazine, but the real, laughing face he thought he knew. He saw her sipping hot chocolate by the fire, her eyes crinkling at the corners. He saw her asleep beside him, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Was any of that real emotion, or was it just part of her performance? The question was a form of torture. New York City was an assault on the senses, a stark contrast to the quiet grief of Maple Creek. The noise, the crowds, the towering buildings, it all felt oppressive. According to the magazine article, the Sinclair Global Headquarters was a sleek glass and steel skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. That was his destination, dressed in his best suit, hoping to project an air of confidence he absolutely did not feel. Liam walked into the lobby of the Sinclair Global Tower. It was less a lobby and more a cathedral of corporate power. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting, and a massive abstract sculpture dominated the center of the space. The air hummed with a quiet, intimidating energy. He approached the monolithic reception desk, where a woman with a headset and an unnervingly perfect smile sat. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Liam said, his voice steadier than he expected. "I'm here to see Camilla Sinclair." The receptionist's smile didn't falter, but her eyes did a quick, dismissive scan of him. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's a personal matter." "My name is Liam Peterson. If you could just tell her I'm here, Miss Sinclair's schedule is managed by her executive assistant. She does not take unscheduled meetings. If you'd like to submit a request—" She pointed towards a tablet on the desk. Liam knew it was a dead end, a corporate black hole designed to make people like him disappear. "Look," he said, leaning in slightly, his voice dropping. "I understand, but this is extremely important. It's urgent. I am her husband." The word hung in the air between them. The receptionist's professional veneer finally cracked. A flicker of surprise, maybe even pity, crossed her face. She typed something into her computer, her brow furrowed. After a moment, she looked up, her expression once again cool and impassive. "Ms. Sinclair has no husband on record," she stated flatly. "Security. We have a situation at the front desk." Before Liam could even process the words, two burly men in sharp suits materialized at his elbows. They were polite, but immovable. "Sir, you're going to have to come with us," one of them said, his voice a low rumble. They escorted him not out the front door, but to a small windowless office off the lobby. A man was waiting for them, older and impeccably dressed, with silver hair and the weary eyes of someone who solved problems for the very rich. He introduced himself as Arthur Vance, head of security for Sinclair Global. "Mr. Peterson Vance," began, his tone calm and dismissive. "I understand you're making some claims." "I'm not making claims." Liam shot back, his frustration boiling over. "I am Camilla Sinclair's husband. We live in Maple Creek. She is 7 months pregnant with my child." Vance didn't even blink. He slid a folder across the polished table towards Liam. "I think you'll find you are mistaken." Liam opened the folder. Inside was a single document, a copy of an annulment decree filed in the state of New York and dated 3 days ago. It cited fraud and misrepresentation as the grounds. His marriage to Elena Miller, no to Camilla Sinclair, had been legally erased. Signed at the bottom was a signature he knew as well as his own, Camilla Sinclair. He stared at the document, the black and white letters blurring into a meaningless grey. She hadn't just left him. She had obliterated their entire life together. She had wiped him from her history as easily as deleting a file. "This is insane," he whispered. "This is impossible." "What's impossible, Mr. Peterson Vance said coolly, "is that you will ever get within 100 feet of Ms. Sinclair again. She has returned to her life, a life that does not include you. I strongly advise you to go back to Maple Creek and forget any of this ever happened. For your own good." The veiled threat was unmistakable. These people, this family, they didn't just solve problems, they made them disappear. He was being erased. Defeated Liam was escorted out a side entrance and deposited onto the bustling Manhattan sidewalk. The city suddenly felt 10 times larger, a concrete jungle where he was completely out of his depth. He was just an architect, a man who built things. How could he possibly fight against people who had the power to unmake his entire reality with a piece of paper? He wandered aimlessly for hours until he found himself in a small park. He slumped onto a bench, the annulment papers clutched in his hand. He was nothing to her, a mistake to be corrected, a secret to be buried. But what about their baby? The child was a Sinclair heir, whether Camilla acknowledged it or not. Was that what this was all about? Did they want his child, but not him? The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through his veins. He looked at the wooden box sitting beside him on the bench. There was one last thing inside. He hadn't focused on the letters. The letters from Carmen. I think you're the bravest person I know. If Camilla had a sister, someone who seemed to be on her side 8 years ago, then maybe, just maybe, he had one last desperate card to play. He had to find Carmen Sinclair. She might be his only way through the fortress her family had built around the woman he once called his wife. Finding Carmen Sinclair was like trying to catch smoke. She held no official position at Sinclair Global and maintained a meticulously private life, a stark contrast to her newly resurfaced sister. After 2 days of fruitless searching online, Liam found a single breadcrumb, a mention in a high society charity blog from 6 months prior. It named Carmen Sinclair as a patron of a specific art gallery in Soho that specialized in emerging artists. It was a long shot, but it was the only one he had. He spent the next day sitting in a coffee shop across the street from the gallery, a place so chic and minimalist it made him feel clumsy and out of place. He watched as the city's elite, draped in designer clothes, drifted in and out. Just as he was about to give up, he saw her. A woman with the same dark hair as Eleanor, but cut into a stylish, sharp bob, stepped out of a black town car. She had the same fine-boned features, but where Camilla's face in the magazine had been hard and cold, this woman's was etched with a sort of weary elegance. Liam's heart pounded. He grabbed his bag and crossed the street, his mind racing. He couldn't confront her in public. He followed her into the gallery, keeping his distance as she spoke with the owner. He waited until she moved to a quieter section at the back, admiring a large, chaotic, abstract painting. He took a deep breath and approached her. Carmen Sinclair. She turned her eyes so much like Eleanor's, but guarded appraising him coolly. I'm sorry. Do I know you? No. My name is Liam Peterson. He watched her face for any sign of recognition. There was none. I was married to your sister. The change in her expression was immediate and dramatic. The polite disinterest vanished, replaced by a flash of panic, then a carefully constructed mask of indifference. She glanced around the gallery. I think you're mistaken, she said, her voice a low, clipped whisper. I don't know what you're talking about. She turned to walk away, but Liam stepped in her path. Please. He said, his voice raw with desperation. Her name was Elena Miller when I knew her. She's pregnant. She disappeared from our home nearly 2 weeks ago, and then I saw her on the cover of Forbes. I just want to know why. I just want to know if she's okay. Carmen stared at him, her composure cracking. He could see a war of emotions in her eyes. Fear, pity, and something else. Frustration. She sighed, a sound of profound exhaustion. Not here, she muttered. Meet me in 1 hour. Washington Square Park by the Arch. Come alone. If I see anyone with you, I'm gone. She swept past him and out of the gallery without another word. An hour later, Liam was waiting, his nerves frayed. Carmen arrived wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. She led him to a secluded bench away from the main crowds. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid to come to New York," she began, not looking at him. "You need to go home, Mr. Peterson. Forget you ever knew her. Her name is Eleanor," Liam insisted. "And I can't. She's carrying my child." Carmen finally turned to face him, and the pain in her eyes was genuine. "You think she had a choice? You think she just decided she preferred a corner office to your quiet little life in, what did the report say? Maple Creek?" "The report?" Liam asked, confused. "My father has files on everyone," she said bitterly. "He's known about you for months. He was just waiting for the right time to make his move." Liam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "What move? What are you talking about?" This was it. The twist. The reason that went beyond a simple, selfish choice. Carmen took a deep, shuddering breath and began to unravel the story, her voice low and urgent. "Elena ran away 8 years ago because our father, Alistair, is a monster. Not in a dramatic movie villain way, in a quiet, soul-destroying way. He controls everything and everyone. He tried to force her into a marriage with the son of a business rival to secure a merger. She refused, so she ran. She created Elena Miller, and for the first time in her life she was happy. Genuinely happy. She told me all about you in secret emails. You were her entire world." Then why Liam's voice was barely a whisper. "Why would she leave?" "Because he found her," Carmen said, her voice cracking. "About 3 months ago, one of his private investigators finally tracked her down. But Alistair didn't storm in and drag her back. He's more clever than that. He waited. He learned she was pregnant. And that's when he saw his opportunity." She paused, looking at Liam, as if to gauge if he could handle what was coming next. "The baby changed everything. To him, that baby isn't a grandchild. It's a Sinclair. It's the next heir to the empire. He couldn't have a Sinclair heir, raised outside the family, in obscurity with a nobody." She said the word without malice, simply stating a fact as her father would see it. "His health really is failing," she continued. "He needs a successor. His plan was always for Camilla to take over. When he found out she was pregnant, he saw the perfect leverage. He sent his man, Arthur Vance, to see her." "I met Vance," Liam said grimly. "Of course you did." Carmen scoffed. "Vance delivered the ultimatum. It was very simple. Camilla was to come home, erase her life as Elena Miller, and take her place as CEO of Sinclair Global. She would raise her child within the family with all the resources and legacy that entails. And if she refused, Liam asked, though he already feared the answer. Carmen's eyes were filled with a deep, sorrowful pity. "If she refused, he would have you destroyed. Not physically at first. He'd start with your career. An anonymous tip about structural flaws in your library project. A lawsuit from a disgruntled former client funded by him. He would bankrupt you, ruin your reputation, make you unemployable. And if you still tried to stay in her life, if you fought him, well, Alistair believes that tragic accidents can be arranged." The world tilted on its axis. Liam finally understood. The cold woman on the magazine cover wasn't a betrayal. It was a sacrifice. She hadn't left him because she didn't love him. She had left him to save him. The annulment, the cold silence, the corporate fortress. It was all designed to push him away, to make him hate her, to make him give up and go back to his life where he would be safe. She was a prisoner, and she was trying to protect her jailer's only target. "She's trapped, Liam," said the realization dawning on him. "Completely," Carmen confirmed. "She's under 24/7 surveillance. Her every move is monitored. She's living in the family penthouse, a beautiful prison. She's playing the part of the dutiful daughter because she believes it's the only way to keep you alive." All the anger and bitterness Liam had harbored for days evaporated, replaced by a wave of love so fierce it almost brought him to his knees. His Elena was still in there, buried beneath the Ice Queen persona of Camilla Sinclair. She was fighting for him in the only way she knew how. "I'm not leaving, Liam," said a newfound determination solidifying in his chest. "I'm not letting him win." Carmen looked at him, a flicker of something, admiration perhaps, in her eyes. "My father has never lost Mr. Peterson. He has more money and power than you can possibly imagine." "I don't care," Liam said, his voice hard as steel. "She's my wife. That's my child. What he has doesn't matter. There has to be a way to get her out. And you're going to help me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. For the first time, Carmen Sinclair allowed herself a small, grim smile. The runaway heiress had a husband who was a fighter. Maybe, just maybe, Alistair Sinclair had finally met his match. Forging an alliance with Carmen, Liam devised an audacious, dangerous plan. It was clear they couldn't outmuscle or outspend Alistair Sinclair. They had to outthink him. Their only chance was to get a confession to get Alistair on tape, admitting to his threats. The stage for this high-stakes gamble was the Sinclair Foundation annual gala. A glittering media event where Camilla would be on public display, and where Alistair, surrounded by his power, would feel untouchable. The plan was fraught with risk. Carmen secured Liam a position on the catering staff, making him a ghost in a black waiter's uniform. He moved through the dazzling ballroom of the Pierre Hotel, his heart hammering against his ribs, balancing a tray of champagne he could barely afford. Then across the sea of tuxedos and gowns he saw her. Standing beside her father, Camilla was a vision in an emerald gown that accentuated her pregnancy. She looked regal, beautiful, and utterly captive. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met. He saw a flicker of shock, of pure terror, before she tore her gaze away. Her mask of cold composure snapping back into place. But he knew she had seen him. The trap was set. Playing her part, a flustered Carmen approached her father. "Father, we have a problem," she whispered urgently. "That man, Camilla's husband, he's here. I saw him with the staff. He's threatening to go to the press tonight." Alistair's face, a placid mask of philanthropy moments before, darkened into a thundercloud of fury. His eyes scanned the room with predatory intensity. He had been assured the architect was a problem that had been solved. "Vance," he hissed to his head of security. "Find the man. Quietly. Bring him to my private study. Come upstairs. I will deal with this insect myself." Moments later, Liam felt a firm hand on his arm. He was escorted through service hallways and up a private elevator to a lavish suite. The study was a fortress of wealth and power, lined with dark wood and the smell of old money. Alistair Sinclair stood by the window. A small man, radiating an immense and chilling aura of authority. Camilla was near the fireplace, pale and trembling. So Alistair began turning his cold eyes on Liam. "You're the architect. the little man who thought he could steal my daughter. I didn't steal anyone. Liam said, his voice miraculously steady as he discreetly activated the digital recorder in his pocket. We fell in love. We built a life you threatened to destroy. Alistair let out a dry, contemptuous laugh. Love. You build buildings, Mr. Peterson. I build empires. My daughter has a duty. My grandchild has a destiny. You are a footnote, an obstacle that is being removed. By threatening my life, by holding my wife and child hostage to your ambition. Liam pressed his gaze, locked on Camilla's, willing her to see his resolve. I did what was necessary to protect the legacy of this family. Alistair stated his arrogance, making him careless. Camilla understood. She made the sensible choice. She chose her child's future over a fleeting romance. Tell him, Camilla. All eyes turned to her. This was the moment on which everything hinged. Camilla looked from her father's demanding glare to Liam's hopeful face. The practiced mask crumbled, revealing the terrified but determined woman beneath. Her voice, though trembling, was clear and strong. He's right, Liam. I made my choice. She took a step towards him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I choose you, and I choose our daughter. I'm done being afraid of him. She turned to face her father, her chin high. It's over, father. You've lost. Alistair's face contorted with a rage that was terrifying to behold. You foolish girl. You would throw away everything for this. This nothing. I will ruin him. No, said a new voice from the doorway. Carmen stood there, her phone held up its camera lens, shining like a beacon of rebellion. She won't. Alistair froze, his eyes darting between his two defiant daughters, the architect he had so thoroughly underestimated, and the two recording devices that sealed his defeat. He was trapped. The master manipulator had been cornered by a love he could never comprehend, and a loyalty he had never earned. The air in the opulent study was thick with the silence of a fallen king. Alistair Sinclair stood defeated, his power rendered useless by a simple audio file and the courage of the people he had tried to break. We are leaving, Liam announced, his voice ringing with authority. He looked directly at the stunned head of security, Arthur Vance. My wife, her sister, and me. You will not stop us. An audio file of Mr. Sinclair admitting to coercion and making threats against my life is in the hands of a third party. If we are not safely away from here in 20 minutes, that file will be sent to every major news outlet in the country. It wasn't a gamble. It was checkmate. Vance gave a curt, almost imperceptible nod. His job was damage control, and this was the only way. They walked out of the room, leaving Alistair alone with the ruins of his control. The long journey through the hotel's service corridors was a silent, tense march toward freedom. When they finally emerged from a side door into the cool Manhattan night, Camilla took a deep, shuddering breath and collapsed into Liam's arms. They were out. Mark's unassuming rental car was their chariot of freedom, whisking them away from the city of glass towers and gilded cages. The journey back to Maple Creek was a blur of quiet relief. Camilla slept against Liam's shoulder, a profound exhaustion finally claiming her. They never released the recording. It was their insurance policy, a silent weapon held in reserve. With Carmen acting as a reluctant but firm intermediary, the terms of their liberation were negotiated. Alistair Sinclair, facing the utter ruin of his reputation, had no choice but to concede. Camilla Sinclair officially took a permanent medical leave of absence citing complications with her pregnancy. The annulment was quietly reversed and replaced by a swift, settled divorce, leaving Elena Miller a free and independent woman. A substantial trust fund was established for her and the baby, not as a gift, but as a severance package from the family she was finally escaping. Life in Maple Creek did not simply snap back to normal. It settled into something new, something more honest. The trauma of the last few weeks left scars, but within the walls of their home, Liam and Elena began to truly rebuild their foundation. She told him everything about her suffocating childhood, and his last vestiges of anger at her deception melted away into an overwhelming empathy for the girl who had to run away just to breathe. He told her about his 10 days of hell searching for a woman who didn't exist, and she wept, finally able to grieve for the pain she was forced to inflict to save him from something far worse. 2 months later, Olivia Rose Peterson was born healthy and beautiful, with her father's calm eyes and her mother's dark hair. As Liam held his daughter looking at Elena, who was glowing with a genuine, unforced happiness, he knew their life would never be simple. The name Sinclair would always be a ghost in their past. But it was just a story now, not a threat. Their own story. The one they were writing together was about a family in a small house with walls painted a warm, hopeful daffodil yellow, a foundation that had been tested, shattered, and then rebuilt stronger and more true than ever before. The story of Liam and Elena is a harrowing reminder that sometimes the people we love most hold secrets we can barely imagine. It's a journey that started with a perfect morning and descended into a nightmare of corporate power and devastating betrayal. But ultimately, it's a story about the incredible resilience of love. It shows us that truth, when fought for, can topple empires, and that the strongest foundations are not built with money or power, but with courage, sacrifice, and an unbreakable trust. Their battle was fought not in a boardroom, but in the heart, and it's a victory for anyone who has ever felt small against an insurmountable force. If their incredible story of love against all odds moved you, please take a moment to hit that like button to let us know. Share this video with someone who appreciates a story of true strength and resilience. And most importantly, if you want to hear more unforgettable real-life dramas like this one, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for listening.